Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, mothers, fathers, daughters, sons, brothers and sisters. Welcome back to the AFVRC season number 4, round number 4, here at the home of British motorsport. It is Silverstone. We've got the full GP layout awaiting our drivers for what is going to be yet another action-packed night of racing. 2 20-minute races are befalling us, with a qualifying session to decide the grid for race number 1, and then a random element of random grid for race number 2. My name is Chris Buxton. I'll be one of your commentators throughout tonight's festivities, but joining me in the box once again, always happy to say, is the voice of the North. It is John Monroe. Good evening, John. Are we looking forward to tonight?
We certainly are. The voice of the North, that's a new one on me. Appreciate that. Yeah, of course we're looking forward to tonight. And just because it's not Knockhill doesn't mean I'm going to be upset, because Silverstone GP presents an entirely different challenge, of course. Much bigger straights, wider circuit, more runoff area, lots of overtaking opportunities, more margin for error as well. And that could definitely come into things tonight, Chris. Obviously, we talked about the randomness. You've got a random grid for race 2, but also later on tonight, we're going to be doing a random track decider for next week's racing too. So plenty of randomness up for grabs today, and I'm sure the racing is going to provide some excitement as well.
Absolutely. So, and I've got to say, Knockhill last week was fantastic. So much fun for the second round of the season. Let's have a look at how that has affected the standings for the top 10 of the championship. Chris Boland with a now much diminished lead up top. Luke Arpino up into second now with 326 points. James King into third on 298. Chris Slater in fourth with 289, just 5 points, such a tiny margin ahead of Peter Finch on 284. Then Peter Plastow 259, Steve Ward 243, just 2 points ahead of Stuart Eacock on 241, with Jack Trenwit on 226 and Jack Ajewski on 216. So that's how the team's championship look. The Royal Air Force still with somewhat of a commanding lead. They have dominated the top steps. Whilst they are the most numerous represented force from of British forces, it's only the top 2 of any team that will score. That being said, they still have a commanding lead ahead of the veterans, with the Navy and the Air Force, with the Army still being well represented, and we very much honour and are thankful for the service of our competing drivers. Right, we've got just about half of the qualifying session to run, and, well, visibility is a bit of an issue.
It is indeed, yeah. It looks a bit foggy out there today at Silverstone, which is going to make things interesting, probably more so for us than the drivers. The drivers just have to ignore the surroundings anyway and focus on their apexes, but we're maybe going to struggle to see who they are. It's still going to be an interesting one for sure, getting the lap in and qualifying with 10 minutes to go. It's such a big circuit, Chris. Compared to Knockhill, you've got so many less attempts here at getting a clean lap together, so it'll be interesting to see which drivers manage to pull one off. I did see temporarily there on the standings that it looks like Stuart McFadden was holding on to the current pole position. Obviously, Stuart took a double win the first time out at Donington, but we didn't see him last time out at Knockhill, so he's going to have taken a hit in the championship for that. Of course, he'll be looking to bounce back, and at the moment, if that's to be correct, he's nearly a second up the road, which is, you have to say, fairly ominous for the rest of the field.
Yes, if memory serves, he is one of our few McLarens in the field. Yeah, look how close the rest of the times are. As you can see, the pole time of 2:09.8 from Stuart McFadden is an absolutely storming time. Yeah, exactly as you say, John. Last week, it was less than a minute for all drivers to complete a lap around Knockhill. That being said, though, it was such an incredible night. I thoroughly loved it. We had great fun and somewhat carnage in race 2 at Donington Park in our opening round 3 weeks ago. And then we had our amazing festivities. We did, unfortunately, have to miss a week due to technical difficulties. That's why we're only on round 3 as opposed to round 4. But that being said, with it being a 2-minute lap, look how close these times are. Barely there's not even a second between the times we can see, and that we can only see, as of what is now, Fielding's just jumped onto the board with that 2:15. That's still improvement to find. There is Stuart McFadden. He is indeed in his trusty McLaren. He really dominated proceedings in the opening round at Donington Park and looks to continue his winning ways. If the times are to be believed, And there's still just shy of 8 minutes for our drivers to get their times on the board. Peter Plastow jumps up into third position, just 100th behind Stevens, up in the 312 car, currently in third.
Yeah, it's nice to see Stevens out there near the top of the grid as well. Obviously, McFadden we've seen before. He's taken his double win. He'll be looking to keep his 100% record going in terms of the races that he's competed in. Obviously, Pete Plastow there in third place. We saw him finish on the podium, second in the first race at Knockhill. So that was a nice little bit of progression there. As you can see, Peter's beautiful red and black Aston Martin heading towards the Luffield and Brooklands section. Looks like he might be getting a little bit of a slipstream for one of the Mercedes in front of him, but he'll be looking to continue his podium form. You've obviously there got Barron in fourth, took 2 second places the first time out of Donington, but much like McFadden, he was missing at Knockhill. So a little bit like McFadden, he's going to be looking to bounce back well and try and get close as he can to the leader there. And you can see him, Stuart McFadden, in his McLaren. Now, as you say, the grid, look how close it is. It's maybe half a tenth, 1/10, 300ths, you name it. It's a small amount between each of the drivers, but McFadden is just in a league of his own, so it'll be interesting to see how he tackles this Silverstone circuit.
Right, so let's ride on board then with Stuart McFadden. Hopefully he'll complete the lap now that we're riding on board with him, just coming through the last part of Club to start the lap. Of course, we are starting on the Hamilton Straight, the newer of the 2 start-finish lines, sweeping through Abbey and then Farm Curve, just catches the apex quite gently to start with. Then it's really, really hard sweeping left, not quite flat out in these cars, but very, very fast nonetheless. Then there's Village, and then get over to the right hand side for the loop, and then Aintree as we return to a more classic part of the circuit. As I'll always remember this particular part for Kimi Räikkönen having a huge moment at this very bridge. God, must be 10 or so years ago now in the Ferrari, as Stewart's having some lag issues. That's what's causing the camera to get a little bit upset. Into Brooklands, he's riding those orange curves, which is absolutely fine. You're not hitting those particularly quickly. Now Luffield, there's several different ways of taking Luffield. You want to maximise your exit speed as much as you possibly can. Flat out through Woodcote, you ride the apex as much as you can. It is pretty flat there. The bravest of the brave will try some overtaking through this particular section, the old start finish straight, now into Copse, and then it is one of the most famous corner sequences in the world. It's Maggots and Beckett's that now await the drivers then, sweeping through the ever-tightening, ever-slowing corners. Maggots first, Beckett's next, finishes on Chapel Curve on to the Hangar Straight. You have just to coax the car to keep them as much momentum as you possibly can, but the grass will await and will spit you towards the barriers as much as you can. A bit of a weave from Stuart McFadden then, slightly unusual, not what you would normally see. Into Stowe, down to around about 130 kph there or thereabouts to keep the car nice and steady. Is he going to bounce out for the pit lane? No, he is indeed going to complete the lap. So towards Vale and then Club to finish the lap. Is he slowing to let somebody through? He's certainly, I think he's slowing to give himself a good start for another lap, essentially. But that, near enough, is a lap of Silverstone.
I mean, that was probably an outlap from Stuart, unless he committed to it at the start and then realised he was down. But either way, it was looking good. I was surprised to see him start weaving there and give up on the lap. But it shows you, I mean, even on a slow outlap, he still looked like he was hitting all his apexes, nice and clean running. So yeah, it's looking ominous for the rest of the field, as I was saying with McFadden, as Tom Stevens abandons ship at the moment, heading into the pits in the 89. There you can see, well, you barely see, you can see some headlights. Peter Plastow in his Aston Martin still sitting there. Actually, no, he's dropped to fourth place because Barron has jumped up into second. The man who's finished second at every race he's started this year, so he'll be looking to keep that run going or maybe go one better. But Plastow certainly looks like he's coming towards the end of a hot lap now as well. Barris behind him bails out of his lap. Another man who got his first podium last time out at Knockhill. And there's Bradley Kropp in the 33. We haven't seen too much of Bradley this season, so good to see some more BMW representation. The BMWs were struggling a little bit last time out at Knockhill, so it'd be nice to see if they can try and make their way further up the order once again. Bradley just on the fringes of the top 10 at the moment as he comes through the last corner. Let's see if he can improve. He's only 200ths of a second at the moment off the top 10, but it's an outlap for Bradley, so it's going to be the next one where he's going to try and improve. It just shows you, though, the amount of drivers that are, just warming up for a lap or bailing out of a lap. It's such a long lap around here, Chris. You really don't get that many opportunities.
No, indeed. You can't just let the timer go and then you can do one banzai lap at the end. That's such a huge risk to do that. Adam Barron in the Porsche then. He was it started the season with a double second place behind our current pole sitter, Stuart McFadden, and by 15 thousandths of a second is ahead of Tom Stevens at present. So close. And somewhat reminiscent of Donington, wasn't it? We had a massive fight for second and everyone else, with Stuart McFadden just running off into the distance. But Stuart, you can argue, with him missing out last week, has given the championship a bit of a chance to be led by somebody else. So we'll see if that comes back to bite him as the season progresses. But of course, with the nature of because our serving, either our veterans or our serving forces members, their regular participation is not always guaranteed, but we are very thankful when we do see them. Adam Barron in the Porsche coming through to complete a lap. Is this an out lap or is this a time lap? The time tower does not say, so that could well have been invalid. Either way, he is pressing on to have another go, potentially. Actually, no, it is going to be his last run because it's more than a 2-minute lap and there's less than 2 minutes on the clock. So he's not going to finish this particular lap, but he's continuing to turn the wheels to keep the practice up nonetheless. Jack Ajewski just got himself inside the top 10 as far as the championship standings are concerned, following his run at Knock Hill. He's one of our Mercedes drivers. He's just been pushed down actually to 14th place following I think it's Stu Etok that's jumped up into 10th. There's Ben Weston, one of our veterans, in the number 80 Aston Martin. Yes, identifying the cars by look is going to be a little bit difficult. Thank goodness we have the overlay from our trusty camera operator, Steve Proudley, doing a superb job. Less than a minute of qualifying to go. Stu McFadden still on the top start.
I do think that Barron will potentially be able to finish the lap he's on. Depends if you are allowed to finish the lap after the timer's run out, so we'll have to wait and see on that one. He definitely won't get another lap after that, though, for sure. The timer will be gone before he reaches the finish. A man who's almost reaching the finish line right now, Darren Barris, heading into the last section, managed to hit his apex okay there, but I mean, we're talking about hundreds and tenths between these drivers. They will be hitting their apexes. It comes down to just that extra mile an hour that they can carry through the corner, get an earlier exit, for example, on the power nice and early. But Barris doesn't look to be improving on that lap. He remains in P11, but he should potentially have one more to go. Here's Boland, though. Of course, race winner, first time out of Knock Hill after a double podium at Donington, so he threw himself into the championship fight, it has to be said. After a strong, consistent start, he showed his pace. He's sitting 5th at the moment now, though. He's getting across the line just before the 2 minutes up. There's a 2:11.544 on that occasion, so he remains in 5th position, but he may well get one more lap. Barron looks like he's bailed. Ajewski's pushing through Maggots and Beckett's, though, in the Mercedes. We're not seeing too many Mercedes towards the front of the grid this time. I think it was McLaren, Aston Martin, Porsche, Aston Martin, and then another Aston, I believe, in 5th with Boland. So it'd be good to see Ajewski try and get further up the order, but he's currently down in 14th.
Yeah, he would prefer to be a few steps further up than that, but with the field being that close, any one tiny mistake from another driver could certainly net you a few positions. Just staying out of trouble is going to be a big drive for our drivers. Jack Ajewski bails on that one. The Stu Etok jumps up into 9th with that 2:11.7 on the board in the number 45 car. There is Ben Weston. I can't even tell who that is behind me. I just cannot see. But there is Ben in the number 80 Aston. There's one of the BMWs was just coming into the pits there. There's Peter Plastow just coming through Stowe in the 312 Aston Martin. No, he's not going to complete this lap. Into the pit lane he comes. Steve Ward, that was the blue Porsche I saw in the background of the shot. So what can he get on the board? 13th currently. He's got 8 tenths to find to crop. He improves in time, but not position. A 2:12.387 for the Porsche for him. That's away with Chris Slater in the Air Force liveried Aston Martin. Currently 7th. Where are you? He's got just shy of 3 tenths to find Finch in the 886. That's that green Aston Martin. It's coming through Maggots and Beckett. It's very easy to push too hard. Very easy to fly off the road. There is championship leader Chris Boland. Does he come into the pits? No, he is looking to complete this lap then. He only sees himself fifth position, 1/10 or 1.5 tenths just over behind Peter Plastow. If he found 2/10, he'd jump up to third at least, which is far easier said than done in a field this close.
Yeah, it was looking like a fully committed lap there from Boland, 2:11.0, so he doesn't quite improve a position, but he was so hot on the way under braking there into, I think it was the Vale corner. But that's going to be it, and it's McFadden on pole once again. Dominant display, led from early on in the session by the looks of it, and it's going to be tough, I think, for anyone to beat him. Of course, the reverse grid race ahead is still to come, so that will make things more tricky. But for race one, it's all going to be about that first lap. Can anyone get their car in front of McFadden? Can they get in the slipstream and hang on to the back of him? It's going to be tough, but they're going to try their best. Yeah,
absolutely. So the challenge very, very different to what we had last time out. Now the grid is forming up. It is McFadden and Barron on row 1. Stevens, Plastow, row 2. Boland and Finch on row 3. Slater and Arpino, row 4. Etok and Steele. We didn't really see Steele, did we, in the course of the session? Number 14 car rounding out the top 10. Barris and Kropp on row 6. Down to 12th with Warden Nijiewski. Down to 14th. Weston and Trenwit take on row 8 with Fielding at the back of the field of our 17 car lineup. So this is how the grid will look for this 15-minute race. And then we will have we will spin the wheel to see how many of our grid will be reversed for race number 2. And then we'll have another random element for next week's race. But we'll get to that at the end of the race. Lights out and away we go. That's a terrible start there for Finch, but it's a storming start for Barron as McFadden has to really sharply pull across to block the Porsche off. Just about manages to get the traction when he needs it, but an absolutely stunning start for the Porsche as Stuart McFadden, he's still having those connectivity issues. That's why he keeps disappearing, but he's got a lot of pressure on him. Wow, Boland then has had a good start. He's at 1 ahead of Peter Plastow. So it is so far so good for the first few turns. Now on to the Wellington Straight. Slipstream certainly being a thing very early on. And look at that. Look at the defensive posture as Stuart McFadden has to adopt. Let's have a quick replay of the start then. May not have been too clean for everybody. And no, it wasn't. Oh, goodness me. I thought everybody had survived the early turns, but not the case. Number 33 BMW taking a trip and facing the wrong way.
Yeah, not the only one to lose out at that start. We also saw Steele in the Porsche lose out. We definitely saw Etik in the 45 dropping many positions and he's 6 seconds off the back of the field. So not a good start for those guys. But McFadden has managed to get away in front there. You can see him there trying to break the slipstream from Barron. We know Barron's got good pace. We haven't seen as much of Stevens, but we also know from previous seasons that Stevens is a well-accomplished driver. Now, this is Slater losing the back end as well. He was running P8 on that opening lap. That's certainly going to cost him. Where's he dropped down to now? Looks like he's dropped all the way down to 14th. That's crucial for Slater. Lost 6 positions in that one. And meanwhile, Barron's maintained his position, so it's good for him. McFadden disappears yet again. We saw these issues at Donington, of course, so it would be a shame if McFadden continues to have these internet issues, but for his sake, hopefully he can make it to the end of the race at least. You've then got Boland and Plastow rounding out your top 5 for the moment. Looks like it's been very clean at the front, and you have to say as well, Adam Barron got so close there to taking the lead into turn 1. He just couldn't quite get an overlap. McFadden was able to cover him off, and at this point, it's looking good for Stuart.
Absolutely. So McLaren, Porsche, Aston, your top few with right behind Arpino and Finch arguing for 6th position. That's Aston and Porsche as well. I think Finch is going to lose out on this occasion as the 22 Porsche of Luke Arpino just holds that inside line, but that Aston is meaning business to try and get the cutback. Not quite going to do it this time as Chris Slater brings in the 32 into the pits already. As we are riding on board with the bright green Aston Martin of John Finch. With that, right ahead, that's Boland. That's he had a pretty good start, but now finds himself under a bit of trouble. Oh, that was nearly impact. I think there may have been a bit of netcode impact between the two. Suddenly the Aston was pitching like he'd been hit there, but we could see there was no impact between the two. There's Tom Stevens in the 3rd place Porsche on the back of Adam Barron. Now, Stuart McFadden has not been able to run off into the distance as easily as he did at Donington Park. But Adam Barron's just about maintaining, I think it's a DRS range there, slipstreaming range. Around about 0.8 of a second is the general rule of thumb where you want to maintain to feel any kind of slipstream Effectiveness does depend on the type of vehicle and how fast those vehicles go, yes, but 8/10 is the general rule of thumb I go by. But McFadden, he'll be very conscious of the fact that he's not been able to break away from those pesky Porsches.
Maybe that's why his car's blinking. Maybe he just wants to avoid giving a slipstream. It's working for him. Up to 7/10 now through Magnus and Beckett's. This is where you're not going to get any help from that. It's all about commitment, smoothness, hitting your apexes, dancing from corner to corner. Stevens gets his line right. You can see the Baron went a little bit deep, but it's going to compromise him through the right-hander here, but he's got it all gathered up. Stevens, meanwhile, gets a good exit as well. Just going back to that incident we saw earlier, or attempted overtake, I should say, Finch did a good job, actually, to get around the outside of Arpino on the run towards Village. These GT4 cars are fairly cumbersome, so they don't have a huge amount of downforce and grip. It's quite easy for them to roll wide off the racing line. Finch managed to carry the speed. Looked like he was going to get the move done on Arpino, but just couldn't quite get it stopped for the loop, and obviously he's going to have to come back at that one a bit later on. Meanwhile, Ben Weston, thank you for the orange wheels, because it makes it so easy to identify that car in the fog here in Northamptonshire. But he's trying to defend at the moment, by the looks of it, from Darren Berris, sitting in P9. Berris, another Aston Martin, of course, so Aston versus Aston. McFadden's now 210.4 out in front with a 210.8 for Baron. That gap now just extending to nearly a second. So this one we're seeing right now is a little bit closer. And there's your lead battle. That's your P3 driver, of course, Tom Stevens, in the second of the Porsches. And he gets in very deep to Village. Almost hits the back of Baron. It's not going to help him much at all. What it does do is bring Plastow into the fight as well. So it's definitely a bit of a 4-car breakaway here.
Absolutely so. It's Adam Barron doing exactly everything he can just to prevent Stuart McFadden dancing off into the distance. But the McLaren does seem to have around about 0.4 of a second advantage over the entire lap over those that are immediately chasing him. Slightly further back there is the Aston battle you mentioned earlier, John. Ben Weston and Darren Berris. They are arguing for their spots. They're a bit of Northamptonshire real estate. They are coming through Brooklands. You can see the slightly different line there. You see Ben Weston either by mistake or by design. Oh, there's another real example of a different line coming through Luffield. Ben trying to maximise his exit speed by giving up the apex, but that's actually compromised him slightly as they're going to be side by side. Are they coming down towards Cops? Not quite. So Ben Weston didn't get the best exit from Luffield that he was hoping for. That compromised his edging through Cops as his tail slightly lets go, as we've got a replay here. So this is what happened to Stewie Eatock then. The car just getting slightly wrong-footed coming into Vale, and around he went, making his day even worse. A bit of a lonely race for the number 45 Aston. So here we are with Ben Weston again. He's now behind Barris as we cut to that replay. As we just saw the tail of the orange accented Aston get a little bit loose coming through Cops, and that's just ruined his momentum and given Barris the position.
It all started at Luffield as well. You could see that Weston went for the kind of late apex approach, and then there's another one. Late on the brakes for Weston. It's not a wet line you need on this occasion, Ben. I know it's misty, but it's not wet. Unfortunately, he just seemed to go a little bit deep into Luffield looking to get the cutback, but the Aston just didn't bite at the front end, so he still missed his apex, his late apex, and ended up getting neither. Obviously put him under pressure. Then we saw the mistake in Cops. There was the move. Barris, absolutely nothing that Weston could do at that point, carried the momentum, and yet good driving from Barris, keeping the car in line and managing to make the most of a mistake there. He moves up into P8 with a 2:12.5 on that lap as well, so it's pretty good pace from Darren as well. Next target for him is Finch, but he's 6.3 seconds up the road already, so these two have fallen quite a long way off of that top 7 battle. Finch obviously trying his best to hang on to the Arpino Porsche. Meanwhile, there's Fielding in the 84 a bit further down the field. So this is your battle for 15th, 14th, 13th. Of course, these guys will be desperate to try and break into the top 12 if they can, because that will give them a chance at reverse grid. Now, the reverse grid is randomised between 6 and 12, but so far this season we've had a 100% record of P12 being reversed. So if that's going to continue, it's highly unlikely, but at the moment it would be Trunwit who would be looking at pole position. I suspect it won't be the same on this occasion, Chris.
I fear you are right on that one, Giles. I love a reverse grid personally. Yeah, to get 3 12s in a row would be something quite astronomical. But this 3-way fight for second place is Barron, Stevens and Plastow. All proven drivers in this championship. We very much enjoyed the efforts of Peter last time out. So this is Porsche versus Aston here, or 2 Porsches keeping the Aston at bay as the McLaren of McFadden does do his slow disappearing trick into the distance. Now 2.2 seconds the advantage the number 53 car has over the rest of the field. But look how close Plastow is to the back of Tom Stevens. Of course, Tom Stevens getting his own bit of slipstream from Adam Barron, which is making the Aston's life even harder. So at the moment, they're just kind of biding their time. We're already over halfway through this race. As we tend to find, the races just vanish with the amount of action that we tend to enjoy. As Ward and Trenwit argue for 12th position. There they are. It is Mercedes versus Porsche for what is going to be 12th position in the end. There's a challenge from Stevens. Will the Porsches try and swap position? Look how close. Look how defensive Adam Barron had to be coming into that first turn into Abbey to try and prevent the advantage of Stevens. And now with Stevens having to be under pressure from Plastow, so it's, you know, one minute you're the aggressor, the next you're the defender, as is the nature of these I was going to say single spec, but single category series. You know, some cars have a bit of an advantage in corners, some have a bit more of an advantage on straights, but these three have been so close all race long. You're just about to see Chris Boland in the background, but he's not gaining enough at the moment. He would capitalise on a mistake from these three, but he himself has got company from Luke Arpino for 5th place.
Yeah, he certainly does. It looks like Luke's going with him, and they're of course going to be desperate to try and catch onto the coattails of this top 4 battle. Obviously, Plastow's got a great position here, just watching Stevens and Barron fight it out and being there to pick up the pieces. The problem Plastow's got is he then gets involved and suddenly he's getting held up as well. There's 2.5 seconds back to Boland, so they should be okay for now. But you never know if things get a bit more scrappy, and you know, we've seen good battles play out in the past. Now, I have noticed with this championship, it's been incredibly clean. We've seen lots of respectful racing, so I don't expect, and I'm probably going to curse it, anything to go disastrously wrong, or these guys to try and block each other too aggressively. But you never know. There's always time for that to change. Stevens certainly looking in his mirrors at the moment, because it's Plastow who's all over the back of him in the Aston Martin, and there's Barron just trying to break the slipstream, but of course there's nothing you can do as the driver in front, because you just know that the driver behind is going to jump straight in behind you, as we're seeing. Stevens now trying to break the toe from Plastow as we head in. He doesn't know whether to look forward or backwards at the moment, and that'll all depend on how neat and tidy Barron can be here as he heads into Vale and through the club chicane. But Barron goes to the outside. It looks like Stevens is defending the inside line, late on the brakes from Plastow. Is he going to try and all the way around the outside move? No, he's not, but he is going to try and set himself up for the next section. One corner leads into another here, so if you have a good exit from one, it's going to help you in the next corner as well. But at the moment, it actually looks like it's spread out again there. Stevens got his apex nailed through the final corner at club, and things have spread out just that little bit. Very fast lap from Boland though, who's now only 1.6 off the back of this battle.
Yeah, Chris Boland plus his entourage of Luke Albini and potentially John Finch behind could well be joining that battle for second in the next lap or so. Yeah, unfortunately, Plastow just got his exit from club a little bit wrong. He had to get out of the gas, and that cost him momentum, but not enough to drop the slipstream from the back of Stevens. But Stevens has pretty much lost the slipstream advantage from Adam Barron. That's nearly a second between the two Porsches. He would definitely be noticing the difference there, but he's still very much defending against the advances of Peter Plastow. There is Boland. We know how quick he is. Luke Arpino, he's now under pressure from John Finch behind in the green Aston. So plenty of battling going on, as we've enjoyed all season long and will continue to do in the remaining 3 minutes of this race.
Yeah, Finch just 9/10 behind Arpino at the moment. In terms of the top 3-4 drivers, actually the top 5 drivers, the only one who's not had a podium yet is Stevens, the man we're watching right now, so he'll be desperate to turn that around. You could just see McFadden there, just about at the distance, 3.1 seconds up the road from Barron. He's won this race as long as he doesn't make any mistakes, and there is the Scotsman, Stuart McFadden, looking all calm and composed. Makes it look very easy, and I'm sure it's not, hustling that McLaren over the curbs here at Silverstone. These guys have got a much more intense battle on their hands at the moment though, of course. And as I say, yeah, Stevens will be wanting his first podium of the year, and Plastow definitely looks like he's got good pace here. Just keep one eye on Boland in the background if you can see him through the mist. 1.6 seconds that gap, and I tell you what, 1 or 2 overtaking attempts, and we will see that gap close between Boland and Plastow, and all of a sudden it'll be Arpino who's catching the back of them. So this race is far but over yet.
Absolutely. So Stuart McFadden just concentrating on keeping his car on the black stuff. Now, wow, it was 3.5 seconds, because in the braking zone that could easily change. And look at that, Tom Stevens too deep coming into Vale, so that's now put the Aston Martin very much in his boot. Can, however, Peter Plastow really make advantage of it? You can see how that gap has affected. How that mistake has affected the gap between Stevens and Barron. Now over a second between the two Porsches. What can Peter Plastow do? It's 1.2 seconds back to Chris Boland as well. Don't discount that blue Aston behind, as he could very, very easily get involved. Again, he's seeing a bit of a line difference here. The Aston trying to take a more traditional line. The Porsche trying to hit the apexes a bit earlier. More of a defensive stance. He knows he's knows he's unlikely to catch Adam Barron. That sounds a little bit disingenuous. But he's more playing the defensive game. He's securing third more than challenging for second, which I think is absolutely right. He's got far more likelihood of losing third than gaining second, unless, of course, Adam Barron makes a mistake. But you haven't shown any. Talking of a mistake, Chris Boland. That's not the first time he's dropped the car in this race. Sadly, the 86 Aston having a bit of a moment down there into Brooklands. Likely just missed his braking point and locked out. Let's see it again. It looked fairly settled on the way in. Just a tail letting go mid-corner. Oh, that was close. Right behind him there. Who was that? Was it Arpino? I think it was Luke Arpino that nearly broadsided the Aston there, but no harm, no foul. Well, he certainly lost a couple of positions, but no major incident for him. As 40 seconds until the flag comes out, there's McFadden. He will find the checkered flag when he comes to the line this time around.
Yeah, 2 places gone there for Boland. Not so bad at the end of the day because he's still got a big gap behind him, but it won't help him in his championship hunt, which he, of course, is in the mix for, given his results so far this season. This man, of course, has to be the favourite, assuming he can make it to more rounds. By the way, I've just seen a change of position briefly between Stevens and Plastow. So those guys swapped for just a second, but it swapped back again to Stevens and Plastow. So that's definitely a 2-car battle. You can see it in the background there. Plastow looking to the outside. Stevens taking a bit of curb. He's making sure he's not running wide this time. In fact, the opposite. He's riding the sausage curb. But meanwhile, this is the checkered flag, of course. And Stuart McFadden wins race 1 ahead of Barron, Stevens and Plastow. That's your top 4 with Arpino rounding out the top 5. Exciting stuff.
Great stuff. It was a valiant effort from Peter Plastow to get into the podium spots. Was not meant to be a brilliant effort from Tom Stevens to fend off the advances of that 3-1-2 Aston Martin. Arpino 4th, Arpino 5th, Finch 6th, Chris Boland in the end down into 7th, Beres 8th, Western 9 with Steele rounding out the top 10. Ijiski 11, Ward is going to come home in 12th with Kropp, the number 33 car, in 13th position. Well, again, our field putting on a great display of a driving prowess. A few mistakes, though, a few unforced errors this time around. Slightly unusual from our field from previous rounds. But again, different circuit, different challenges. Not everybody will do well at every single circuit. And it kind of depends on how well you've practiced the circuit. Again, it is a bit misty out there, so weather can play its part. But let's see how many grid places are going to be reversed for the second race. We've had 2 lots of 12.
Oh, wow.
My goodness me, it's 12 again. Well, I said that's exactly what we wouldn't get. So, I think we both said that's exactly what we wouldn't get. But again, 12 spots reversed for race number 2.
Unbelievable. I think that might mean that Steve Ward's on pole position for this race. I'd have to go back and check over the line, but I know he was in 12th with just a lap to go. So interesting stuff, and that just means more excitement for us. It means more slower drivers. I say slower, like we're talking about a couple of tenths here and there, but the fastest drivers will be further back down the grid with more places to make up. So that's always going to be exciting for us. Interesting point you made. Definitely saw more individual mistakes here than Knockhill. I think it's because Knockhill's a narrow circuit and the cars are very much on rails, so they've got to really try and keep it together and try and just keep yourself on the black stuff. Whereas with Silverstone, you've got so much room to work with. The track's so wide, the corners are so long that you can really push the limits of the car a lot more and dance it and work with it a bit more. And it just means that you're closer to the limit of the car. Therefore, instead of the edge of the circuit, you're more likely to actually reach the edge of the tyre limit, and then you're going to spin. So I think that's why we're seeing more mistakes here today. But of course, race 2 will give a chance for those drivers, likes of Slater and Boland, to redeem themselves and get a clean run in.
Yeah, absolutely true. And it could also be that because Silverstone is one of those tracks that any racing fan kind of instinctively knows. It's in every kind of racing sim. It's seen action from pretty much anything that has an engine. Knock Hill, not so much. So you can understand people maybe putting more time into practicing Knock Hill and maybe not so much into Silverstone, maybe not refreshing themselves on what their car and their setup is capable of at Northamptonshire's finest. That could also be an element to bear in mind. But we will see how that transpires for race number 2. It was somewhat chaotic at Donington. It wasn't as chaotic in Knock Hill. Certainly not as chaotic as I was expecting it to be last time out. So that was also great to see. But yeah, you made a great point earlier, John. The racing is always very, very respectful here, and very much looking forward to seeing the same thing. So what's happening now is the server is being reset. The grid will be put together when all the drivers are back in the session. We're waiting for our Podium 3 to make themselves available. They don't have to. It's not mandatory for them to do so, but it's always nice to have a chance to our podium finishes. They haven't made themselves available, but as soon as they do, we will grab them in and have a word.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing I was going to say, the last time we saw drama, I guess, in terms of lots of incidents, was that first lap of that second Donington race. Since then, as you said, the driving standards have been really, really good. We've seen consistently clean battling and very few mistakes that actually involve other cars. Generally, people have been making mistakes on their own if there are any. But I have to say that first race at Silverstone looked a heck of a lot like the first race at Donington. We had Stuart McFadden running away in the front of the McLaren. We had Barron finishing second, and we had a battle from second to fourth for the majority of the race. So it was kind of deja vu in terms of the first round of the season. I wonder if that's a bad omen for the first lap of this second race. Don't want to preempt fate or anything like that. But if we're going to continue the consistency, I'd be a bit worried.
Fair point, well made. I have no immediate argument to that. But time will tell on that particular point. So this is always the kind of the calm before the storm. The first race now that people have gotten a bit of a feel for where they sit in the pecking order. By this round, the third round of the season, people know realistically where their pace sits with their chosen car against the field. We know that Stuart McFadden is blindingly quick in the McLaren, so there is an expectation for him to run off into the distance. So, getting a notification, we can roll the random track now, so we will head over to that particular wheel. So there's quite a few great circuits here, some lesser known ones. Let's have a quick run through of what we've got. So the wheel hasn't been spun, so it's not automatically using the Okayama. Also, we did have confirmation from production that the random grid wheel doesn't only pick 12; it did pick 6 whilst it was off air. So that's something to bear in mind.
No conspiracy theorists out there.
So let's have a look at some of these. Now, I'm not familiar with all of these personally. Okayama, very difficult circuit out in Japan. Oschersleben, that is such a strange circuit. It's a bit of a divisive one there.
Yeah, Oscherslaben's got the very difficult turn 1, fast entry, and a long late apex for turn 2. Really, a circuit that takes a lot of time to master, not a lot of time to learn, but there's huge amounts of time to be gained over the chicanes and stuff like that. So that would be an interesting one. I think it would be well suited to the GT4s, as well most of these tracks. Letting on a twisty circuit in France, lots of elevation change. That'll be an exciting one for sure. I believe that's a recent addition to the iRacing service as well. It's been a long time since I've watched a race around Lebanon. Laguna Seca, a famous one, of course. You've got the corkscrew, a bit more like Knock Hill, I guess. We can call it America's Knock Hill. I'm sure most people call Knock Hills Scotland's Laguna Seca, but we'll go with America's Knock Hill. Have you raced much around Laguna Seca, Chris?
Love Laguna Seca. It is, I will admit, it is my favourite circuit of this collection. I adore the American Classic. GT4s are brilliant around there. It is not an easy circuit to get right. It is quite a low traction circuit, and that corkscrew, the descent will leave your lunch behind. It is a really difficult circuit to get right, but so satisfying when you do.
Yeah, absolutely. Then you've got VIR, of course, Virginia International Raceway. Lots of twists and turns, big sweeping sections. It's such a tricky circuit to get right. I'm not the biggest fan of racing around there, but it's always fun to watch, and definitely punishes mistakes there as well, as does Tsukuba. a kind of smaller, twistier circuit, hard to overtake, great in small cars, so the GT4 should go well around there, but that's going to be an interesting one as well. And then Rudskogen and Oran Park are our final two. Rudskogen, only been in iRacing for a year or so, bit of a tricky circuit to master again, all about track limits and late apexes and all sorts. Again, probably quite tricky to overtake around there. Oran Park, meanwhile, is just a piece of history that we're so glad has been preserved, I guess, in iRacing. There's no longer a circuit there; it's just houses. So it's fantastic. Exactly.
Yeah, it's such a great shape. It was a wonderful circuit, but alas, it fell by the wayside. So let's. Right, enough of the talk. Let us spin the wheel then and see what where we are racing next week. I know where I want it to be, but let us see what the wheel doth decide. It's going to be... Oh, is it Austria? No, it's Lebanon. It's France. Wow, that is going to be interesting. It's not going to go far enough. It's going to tease me, look. It's just creeping towards the goodness sake. So, Lebanon, we head to France then. Now that's going to be interesting because again, that's a very much a lesser known circuit for our drivers to have to contend with. And being that we've obviously announced it now, everyone has the same length of time to practice it. With the calendar being announced, obviously with the amount of free time that our drivers have, it's variable, but they'll chuck in a fair amount of time on various circuits. But this is going to have that much less time because it's only been announced now. So that's going to be really interesting to see how our drivers cope with that.
Absolutely, yeah. It's a double whammy, really, because it's a fairly new circuit to the service, as far as I believe. And obviously, with only a week to prepare, it's going to need more practice, but you're going to have less time to do so. So it's certainly going to advantage the drivers to have a little bit more spare time on their hands over the next week. Maybe the plans to race in the IMSA 12 hours Sebring on iRacing have been cancelled, so they can practice around Lebanon. But it is an interesting circuit. It's one that a lot of people are not going to be familiar with. Very tight hairpins, one after the other. Lots of overtaking opportunities, but it's got an interesting flow to it once you get the hang of it. Certainly interested to see how the GT4s handle it. It's probably a well-suited size for GT4 racing, and that'll be why it's in the list. But yeah, lots of learning for the drivers to do. Everyone enjoys a wee trip to France. It'll probably be less foggy over there, so I'm sure that'll be a welcome break from the grey skies of the UK for our drivers.
Absolutely. So it will actually be my very first time Lebanon. I've commentated many different tracks in my, I was working this out earlier, nearly 8 years of sim racing commentary. Lebanon's never been one of them. So it being a recent addition to iRacing was part of the reason, but it's one of those circuits that just doesn't appear in other racing sims either. So that I'm very much looking forward to that. I always look forward to a new challenge. And not every driver does. Some drivers like to have that air of comfort, that air of familiarity behind them. Some drivers thrive in it. They really enjoy just being literally chucked in the deep end.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a fun challenge to have to learn a new circuit as a driver because it always comes in handy for later events. I'm sure that Lebanon will appear in some of the official iRacing series in the next year or so, probably plenty of them being in recent editions. So it's going to be a good opportunity for them to force them to have to learn for the race. And it is a fun track as well. So yeah, certainly happy to see that one on the calendar. And it'll be nice for you to see something new as well, because we do get a lot of consistency in sim racing. We have lots of famous and well-loved circuits that get used a lot in these calendars, the likes of Silverstone. I can't count how many times I've watched or raced at Silverstone, but Lebanon, I think I was 2015 last time I looked at that. So I think that'll go down well with the drivers, to be quite honest. But for some of them, I'm sure it'll be stressful as well. Just to say, by the way, we've got the reverse grid. Well, I've got the top 12 in front of me from the first race. I'll talk you through the grid for the next one. We'll have Ward on pole position from Majewski, who will be joining him in the front row, and then you've got Steele and Weston on row 2. Weston with his orange wheels, and then you'll have Barris and Boland on row 3. So I think Boland actually, we could argue that he spun deliberately to get 7th for the reverse grid. I don't think he did, but he might claim that, and he'll be looking at possibly one of the favourites actually to win this second race. He'll have to keep running away from the field if he wants to stay ahead of the charging McFadden, who will undoubtedly come through the field. Then you've got Finch in the green Aston Martin, who will be starting in, I believe, 6th position, or 7th position actually on the grid. But then Arpino and Plastow, Stevens rounding out your top 10, with Barron and McFadden on row 6. And then it will be Krop, Etic, Slater, Fielding, and Trunwit. So that's your grid for race 2.
Fantastic stuff. Thank you very much for that, John. And we're waiting for our drivers to rejoin the session. We won't be going through all 30 minutes of the practice session that we're currently in. We're just simply waiting for the drivers to join and for the grid to be built. Then we will jump straight into race number 2. One is set to be certainly easier on the eyes. We can see far easier, as we can clearly see in these camera shots. There's Jack Juski. Now he somewhat overcooked it, as we saw just coming out of Aintree a little bit earlier on, which he probably didn't thank us for capturing on stream. But there we go. Well, that's somebody to us. Luke Arpino taking a somewhat exploratory route through Stowe. No, it wasn't Stowe. I couldn't talk. It was Cops, I beg your pardon. As they are heading through Maggots and Beckett's now. Now we get to really enjoy the liveries. The fog does add a challenge, but I've always been a really big fan of how these cars look.
Yeah, I'm a fan of sunshine as well, and you're right, it really does bring out the liveries much nicer, so we like a bit of that. I just love that Luke Arpino livery. I think it's absolutely stunning, possibly my favourite on the grid this season. Just a shout out as well to, I think, Season 3 champion Ryan Martin, who's joined us in the YouTube chat. Good to see Ryan watching on, not competing this season, but he will be looking to get back into it next season after spine surgery, so not sure if that's an exclusive announcement, but we would like to see Ryan Martin back in the grid for the next season to try and give McFadden a good challenge, and I'm sure Ryan will be able to do so. Very competitive driver, and he's missed from the series, so hopefully you get back up and running soon and we'll see you back out there.
Yes, we wish you well on your recovery as well from aforementioned surgery. That can't be an easy thing to deal with, but again, we look forward to your participation. That green Aston is my favourite, I'm afraid to say. They all look fantastic, but that green Aston, my favourite colour is green, where I've always been very partial to that particular car. That's Finch's car. So, yeah, that's been my favourite livery so far. Unless someone's livery changes, which I don't know if they're going to do. They all look brilliant, and we get to enjoy them in their full splendour now the fog has gone. So an extra challenge then with the reverse grid. Adam Barons we're looking at will be starting alongside race winner Stuart McFadden. Now last time at Donington Park it was somewhat made easier by the lap one incidents, shall we say, that Stuart McFadden and Adam Barron, or certainly Stuart McFadden, was able to really just dance his way through. Will it be the same again here in Silverstone? Track is a bit wider, a bit more room for mistake, but again, if you do make those mistakes, it's near impossible to make that time back up again. We're seeing Adam Barron flirting with the sausage curves there. That's not the quickest way of taking those corners.
Yeah, we heard from Stuart after the Donington round that he apparently just closed his eyes and sent it on lap 1, and it seemed to work for him, but I don't know if that's going to work second time round. Obviously there's more room at Silverstone, but that actually in some ways makes it more tricky because the drivers have got more places to try and block you and work out where to go, so it's going to be harder for them to make moves through. And obviously I know it's not nice to witness or talk about, but you've got that issue with the blinking, and I'm sorry to say it will make a difference. You know, McFadden's going to struggle. He's going to try and come through the field with a blinking car. It means others in front of him might not know exactly where he is on circuit or around him, and that could unfortunately cause some issues. So I hope it's something he can look into for the remainder of the season, but it just means that drivers are going to have to be extra vigilant, but I know that these guys will be because they've demonstrated an incredible amount of skill and caution throughout the season. It's been great, but we will get a short rolling start once again here just to try and keep things a little bit more spread out on that opening lap and avoid any issues with the clutch, lack of clutch really on the McLaren and some other cars. Of course, it's fixed setup for the series, so all the drivers will be on exactly the same setup as their counterparts in the same cars, but that doesn't mean that all cars will be set up the same. You know, the Porsche might not be set up the same as the McLaren or the Mercedes, for example, so there are still variables, and we now look at the front of our field for race 2 at Silverstone. Any predictions, Chris? Who's going to win?
Ooh, it's going to be difficult to look away from Stuart McFadden, but I think Boland is in for a great shot here. So I'm going to be looking at our championship leader to see if he can just work his way through that top 6 to take that top spot. But here they come then, on the rolling start. The lights will dictate when they go as they come around Vale, and we're getting fidgety. We are racing here at Silverstone. It's getting very close, 4 wide already as we're coming down towards Abbey for the first time. That's been a good start from Darren Barris. That's very wide for Poland, but he's got some space there. Woo! That was a tiny impact there between himself and I think it was a Jewski that he just got the back of, but does manage to survive. Look at Aaron Barron. He's already up into 6th position. Wow, he's had a stormy start, but that's trouble at the back. That's Etok, Steele and Trentwit that's gone for a bit of a spin, and there goes Bradley Krupp in the BMW. That's a backwards fading Plants now. Oh no, challenging for podiums, now finds himself in last.
I take full responsibility. There was another car, 2 cars off on the straight. That looked like one of the Porsches as well in the distance. Not quite sure who that was, but I cursed it. I said it's going to be similar to race 2 at Donington potentially, and there we are. We saw the carnage. I think there was 3 or 4 different incidents there. One of them did affect Barron slightly, but he's got away with it in P6. I tell you who else has got away with it. McFadden, who was running in 11th on the way into turn 1. He's already up into 4th place. Unbelievable stuff. I'd love to see his onboard once again from that first lap. Darren Barris, what a jump he got though from the 2nd or 3rd row it might have been. He got an incredibly early launch off the line, just managed to get straight away to the front of the grid into turn 1, and that looked like the Mercedes just getting a bit of a wobble on, as we say, rejoining the middle of the circuit, but well done to everyone behind for avoiding, and we did see the car spinning off in the distance as well. I think that might have been our pole sitter Ward actually, who went spinning off on his own down to P14, so a disastrous start unfortunately for our pole sitter.
Sadly so, and I think that may well have put... Oh, no, that's Adam Barron in trouble. Adam Barron's off the road. You can see him falling down the tower. Our 2nd place finisher from race 1 is in trouble, and he's now dropped all the way down to 12th, but at the moment is Barris from Finch from McFadden. Stevens and Arpino have just swapped round on the run down towards Stowe. The bright green 886 car nailed to the back of Ferris. So at the moment, it's a battle of the British manufacturers. Aston from McLaren. 2.7 seconds separates Stuart McFadden from the top 2, but that was no chance. So what happened here? Oh, he just dropped on his own. So a rare mistake then from Adam Barron in the middle of Maggins and Beckett's. Chris Boland in the pits already. So, there went my prediction for the race win.
Yeah, I think Barron just lifted off the throttle there to try and avoid running into the back of the car in front, and the nature of that Porsche unfortunately just rotated on him, whether it was a touch of the brakes or just a lift, but unfortunately it was unstable and it cost him a lot of positions. I have to say as well, Slater, he's in 5th position. This is not someone who benefited from the reverse grid. He did spin off in race 1, but he actually ended up finishing outside of the top 12, so Slater's had an incredible start to get back up into P5. There's your green Aston up in P2, John Finch chasing down Barris as well. Tell you what, Finch is looking competitive here. He could well take the lead of this race before McFadden catches him, but I mean, McFadden's going to do his best to get ahead as quick as he can. I mean, there's 12 minutes to go and we're already seeing him 1.4 off the lead. Incredible stuff from our, I guess, the pace setter in this particular championship, but Finch is looking good actually, half a second off Barris.
Yeah, so far so good. John Finch trying to find a chink in the armour of the number 40 car. As we look a little bit further back, Stu Etok is challenging Fielding in the 84 BMW. Goes to the inside line. They're going to go too wide as they come through Woodcut, now heading towards Copse. It's brave to go side by side now. These GT cars can, they can take a bit of a knock and a bit of a bump, but well navigated by both of them. That's going to compromise the exit of the BMW. Stu Etok took that commanding line and essentially just thrown Fielding into the clutches of Steele and the recovering Adam Barron. A 4-way fight, very, very intense. So people trying to improve in their position. Look at Adam Barron trying to find some way of getting some traction. Back up to the top then. Defensive posture there for Barris coming into Stowe, trying to keep John Finch behind. But of course, the more they fight, the more that is in. Not that Stu McFadden needs any advantage or anyone to fight ahead of him to close gaps down. He's now very much in that lead battle. Duncan Steele down into 10th. That's Adam Barron that has taken that spot just before Stowe. He's already having a look at the BMW, trying to really make up for lost time as they are working their way through Club and Vale. Oh, that's the BMW. Now, was there impact between the two? I'm not sure there was. I think the BMW dropped it a little bit on his own. Look at the top 3. McFadden really means business. He's caught the 2 Astons. How quickly can he work his way through? Or will the Astons be able to keep McFadden at bay?
There he is down the inside, the blinking McLaren up into P2. He's just at 2:10.3 on that lap, which I believe may have been a tenth quicker than his fastest lap in the last race as well. So McFadden on a charge, and nothing much Finch could do about it. He drops down to 3rd, so he will not lead this race after all. Meanwhile, we're seeing a replay. This is Adam Barron. So this will be the spinning BMW. I don't think there was contact. Am I wrong? Maybe I'm wrong. They look like could have been a little nudge there on the 84, but it was just the two cars coming together. Nothing too crazy, but if Aaron Barron did nudge the back of him, then unfortunately you might be looking at a post-race penalty. We'll have to wait and see. But yeah, Finch couldn't really do much there about McFadden. It was just a pounce from the Scotsman. He just took a lot of speed on the exit, took him by surprise, jumped down the inside, and there wasn't really much Finch could do through the loop to defend that position. Now it's Beres who's going to have his eyes glued to the mirror, but I think there's a fairly ominous feeling about this one.
Well, indeed. He's well within his right to defend it, as when the McLaren is in sight, he'll know where to defend exactly. Now, that actually has another connotation. It means that John Finch won't have anybody to slipstream off of when the McLaren is out of sight, but then the McLaren's not gaining any slipstream either, if I remember the physics of iRacing well. But Tom Stevens is closing in on them. That gap down to 1.4 seconds. There is the Porsche at the top of the shot. Now the McLaren sizing up and moving the outside of Stowe. Can he get it done? That's a long way round, but no, the car just not quite biting enough to keep him in that contention. Here comes Finch. Can he challenge the McLaren? Is he going to have a go coming down into Vale? No, he opts not to this time around. But the more they fight, that brings in the 89 Porsche. We could have a four-way fight for the lead before long.
You can see what McFadden was thinking there. There was an attempt at heroism, but unfortunately, he didn't make it. And you can see the front end just didn't want to grip. The rear came around, and speaking of grip, those two cars have gripped each other. Boland's in the wall. The man who had a good chance in this race of getting a good finish with the reverse grid ends in with a fairly damaged front end on the Aston Martin. That's not going to go too much further at pace anyway. But Beres is managing to hold on to the lead, and this could be another move. He tries the same move down the inside, but he then pulls out of it to try and get himself a better exit. Unfortunately, in that section of circuit, you just lose so much time if you make a half-hearted move and have to back out of it. And all of this brings Finch back into the mix. So McFadden not finding it easy so far. Great defensive stuff from Darren Beres up to this point, but you can see how much pace that McLaren's got. He's going to try and go inside or outside if he can, and he's going to enjoy it at the same time. Meanwhile, this is the replay. So this is Barron, the 86, and you've got the 84 on the outside. And there's just, there's front to rear contact. They sort each other out, and at that point, there's nothing much the drivers can do. So the secondary contact was basically just a consequence of that first bit of contact. So real unfortunate stuff between the two of them. Fielding keeps on going unharmed. Meanwhile, McFadden looks to the inside. Will he make a move? Heading into Copse. He pulls back out, back into the slipstream. Beres can focus on his apex, and McFadden's going to have to watch his mirror here because Finch is going to be all over the back of him as well. But it's another good exit from the McLaren. It's just relentless stuff right now.
Superb defensive driving from Darren Beres to keep a very hard charging Stuart McFadden behind. That's keeping John Finch in play. Exactly as you say, less than a second behind now. Tom Stevens in that 89 Porsche. He just maybe needs another lap to get properly into the slipstream. The backwards camera from our race leader again. He's done a superb job of keeping that McLaren at bay. Stuart McFadden having a look at that inside line again, just blinks out of existence at potentially the wrong time. Oh, he tried it, but again, the door very firmly but fairly closed in his face by our race leading Aston. What a fight that Stuart McFadden's got ahead of him. Superb stuff.
Yeah, it's worth mentioning that blinking McLaren, it's not actually going to be affecting McFadden so much. It's actually the cars that he's racing with, because Beres won't know whether to defend the inside or not. Obviously, he could end up turning in, and McFadden could be appearing there, because on McFadden's screen, he can see all the other cars. So it's actually very, very tricky to defend against, and he's doing a superb job of it so far, is Darren Beres. And you can see now it's actually brought 4 cars in. As you mentioned, Stevens right on the back of Finch now. And we know that Stevens has got good pace, but there's a defensive line from Beres. That's going to hurt him on the exit. McFadden tried the up and under, but he kind of got blocked at the apex. Beres pins it to the inside. McFadden right to the outside. I tell you what, Finch could have sent one there. If he was in a cheeky mood, he could have thrown it down the inside, and McFadden wouldn't have been able to turn in on his apex. But as it is, McFadden's got the run. He's going to be in the slipstream. He's got good straight line performance. Beres defends to the inside though, so it's McFadden now to the outside as we head towards Brooklands. How late can you brake? I think McFadden's going to try and go all the way around the outside. Beres manages to hold on to the apex, but McFadden, if he can just keep it alongside, he's going to have the ground, and there it is. He has the inside line. Nothing Beres can do about it. He's going to try and hold it on the outside, but McFadden gets the power down. The Aston slides, and through goes the McLaren of Stu McFadden. He's come through from the back of the grid once again, and he now leads this race. And now, all of a sudden, Beres is going to be defending second place from Finch, and I don't know if he's going to be able to do it.
Oh, Finch already managed to wrong foot Beres to get that inside line coming through Copse, but now Finch has gone too deep. Stevens now takes third in the Porsche. The right place, right time. And that's just given Stu McFadden the excuse he needed, the opportunity to just break that range, that slipstream range to his chasers. So Stu McFadden, he really had to fight for that, in fairness. But the lead now very much back in the hands of the number 53. A bit further back, Ben Weston arguing against John Trunwitt. This is for 15th position between these two. There's the orange wheels of the Aston we mentioned earlier on. With, beg your pardon, this is Fielding and Weston, excuse me, that are arguing for 14th position. 15 seconds further back is Trunwitt, keeping Chris Boland company at the tail end of the field.
Yeah, that battle for the lead was superb on all fronts. We've seen it, not the first time I said that this season, but McFadden really had his work cut out. Barris was defending brilliantly. Finch was right there in amongst it at the same time as Barris gets a bit of a wiggle on through the last corner, stealing my words away from me. But Stevens is the man who's going to have more pace here. An 11.6 on that lap. We saw Stevens on the podium in race 1. He'll be looking to make it back-to-back rostrums, will the Royal Navy driver. But yeah, McFadden, the main thing for him really was that first lap. Once again, by making up so many positions on the opening lap as Weston runs off and onto the curb and through goes Fielding. But yeah, that opening lap from McFadden is what does it for him. It means he only has to make 2 or 3 actual moves for the rest of the race when he's coming up against drivers who can defend well from him. If he's behind the likes of Barron and Boland on lap 2 and 3, they're going to make it so difficult for him to pass. But if he can get them on the first few corners, all of a sudden then he's got the slower drivers at the top of the grid that have had a bigger reverse grid, if you see what I mean. And that makes things a bit easier. But I tell you what, Barris certainly didn't make it easy for him there.
No, certainly not. He's now making Tom Stevens' life that little bit more difficult. So it's now McLaren from Aston from Porsche, your top 3, with John Finch still just about hanging on in there. He's 7/10 back from the tail end of the Porsche at the moment. Again, Tom Stevens trying to wrong foot the Aston. He's kind of got Barris in a bit of a defensive posture, but the number 40 car just maintains his momentum to keep the Porsche behind. So, good effort from Tom Stevens. Didn't quite come off on that occasion. Adam Barron, from that early mishap that he's had, now back up into 7th. He's only 1.5 seconds off the back of Luca Alpino and Chris Slater in their battle for 5th. Yeah,
Barris has missed his apex there. That's going to hurt him very much onto the hangar straight as they head now down towards Stowe. He just didn't get a good exit through Chapel. He missed his apex, and from that point on, you just know this is going to happen. We're now going to run 3 wide potentially into Stowe, are we? Tell you what, Finch is making this interesting. Stevens got the inside line. Finch takes the inside from Barris, who's going to lose out entirely. And then they seem to sort themselves out pretty nicely, it has to be said, in uniform as they exit Stowe. And that's the change of position that we saw. So Stevens back up to 2nd, late on the brakes from Barris, who was almost into the back of Finch, managed to get out of the way of it, and he's lost a few tenths. But I think that's now, I would say, probably in pace order. I think McFadden's probably the fastest, and then it would be Stevens, and then Finch and Barris have swapped as well. So in terms of the top 4, that could be the decisive lap.
Well, it could well be, as there's less than 2 minutes on the clock. So again, this could well be our last lap. There's Slater having an argument with Luca Alpino. It's another Aston versus Porsche battle, and less than a second behind. There he is Adam Barron. He's dragging with him Crop as the gets very quickly coming through Abbey and Farm. There is Adam Barron up into 7th position. He's does he have enough time to challenge the 2 ahead? It depends how hard Chris Slater and Luca Alpino argue for 5th place. So it's certainly possible that Adam Barron could pick up another 2. But look at the defensive driving from Chris Slater. He goes straight for that inside line coming out to Brooklands once again. Is it going to be enough for Luca Alpino? He wants to dance around the outside. He can't quite do it. No, he just about has the door slammed in his face from Chris Slater, but that brings Adam Barron very much into the mix. He's got no immediate challenge from Crop behind. That Porsche of Adam Barron, the number 5, could still upset this battle for 5th.
He certainly could, and Barron, we know the pace he's got. Arpedo has been consistent this year. He's sitting 2nd in the championship, looking at another top 6 here, but he doesn't quite, or hasn't yet demonstrated the raw pace that we've seen from Barron in his 3 appearances so far. I don't think Barron will have any damage from those spins from earlier in the race, and he is looking racy in that Martini-inspired Porsche. So Yeah, well, definitely. Barron's going to be looking ahead. Arpino's got to look both ways here because Arpino knows he's quicker than Slater. He's only got potentially one more lap to go. This might even be the last lap, depending on where McFadden is at this current stage, because we've just hit the 15-minute mark, so we'll keep an eye on that one. It might just be a few corners Arpino has to defend here. He also wants to attack, though, and it's Slater who's got the more defending than anyone else to do.
Look at Slater's posture. It's just glued to the inside coming up to Stone. But can Arpino outbreak him? He's gone too deep. Here comes Barron. Can he do anything about it? I think we have got another lap to go, or have we? No, the checker flag is out. There goes Barron. There's going to be 3 wide, but Stu McFadden is your winner for race number 2. Takes the victory. Stevens second. Finch third. Barron has got Slater. And Slater's gone too deep. Is he going to lose out to Crop? A bit of a punch in the face between the two cars, side by side. Who's going to win out there? Flash of the lights from Barron. He comes home 6th. Arpino takes 5th. Slater, just by 300 a second, beats Crop to 7th place. Etog 9th with Steele rounding out the top 10.
Yeah, most of those guys will be smiling. Not sure all of them will. There was great stuff there, and it was Slater who missed out, but it was his own mistake, Chris, that made him lose the back end and not get the apex out of club. Hip and shoulder from the BMW, returned the favour, and he manages to hold on to that position, but Arpino breaks into the top 5. McFadden wins again. 4 wins in 4 attempts this season for Stuart McFadden. Certainly a championship contender if he can attend as many rounds as he can, but we have to wait and see how that's going to play out. What he is doing right now is securing as many points as he can at this stage when he is here, which is certainly going to keep him in the mix. And we've just seen another night of fantastic racing that's passed incredibly quickly.
It has. And we love it. I so look forward to these races. They are so much fun to commentate on. We hope you lovely people watching along, either live or post-event, are enjoying it as much as we are. Hopefully we will hear from our Podium 3. Like I say, it's not mandatory that they come and see us. We can't just doorstep them on the podium as they can in real life. They do have to actually come and join us in the interview waiting room, but they're not doing so at the moment, which is a bit of a shame. We always like to hear from our drivers, especially after the second race. Would really love to hear from Stuart McFadden, because he really did look like he had to put a lot of work into that one to get the double win, unlike last time we'd done. Sounds a bit disingenuous to the rest of the drivers, but it really was a much simpler affair for Stuart McFadden at Donington than it was here at Silverstone. Oh, what might have been if he had been at Knockhill. I'm sure he is ruining not being able to race at what would be his local.
Exactly, and Knockhill being his local, I'm sure he would have gone strong there. Generally find that local drivers do go well at Knockhill in sim racing for some reason, but I think this field is so close. You know, everyone's maybe a 10th or 2 separated, or even on a big circuit like Silverstone GP, which is over 2 minutes long. Everyone is incredibly close. The racing's great, but Stu McFadden is just one level ahead of everyone else at the moment. It's a little bit like what Max Verstappen's doing in Formula 1, is what Stu is doing to this GT4 field. And the question is, throughout the season, can anyone else actually come in and stop him?
At the moment, the only person that can stop Stu McFadden is Stu McFadden. So he just hasn't put a wheel wrong anywhere. And that's been the amazing thing. In a car that he's not popular in this field. We've only seen 2 McLarens. We only saw 1 tonight. We saw 2 in the opening round of Donington. But, you know, it's not been the populous choice. So definitely the Porsche being the most popular one, I think that is the most populous choice we've had in this season. So he's making a less popular car work very, very well. Will that be the case in every round? We don't know. We won't know until we get there. But I'm also really looking forward to next week with us heading to France for a very much lesser known track. Will it be another Stu McFadden domination? We simply don't. We simply no idea.
Yes, obviously with Stu as well, I would love to see that on board of his first lap, because it must have been thoroughly entertaining. But he, as a driver himself, I believe, is leveled up as well. It's not just a case of him being level ahead of everyone else. It's him getting to that stage in the first place, because he was a championship contender last year, of course. I believe he was in the championship fight right up until the final round when Ryan Marston took the championship. So it looks like he's just raised his game, and he's going to have to wait to see if anyone can challenge him. But as we say, it's looking good for the championship for him. A heck of a long way to go, though, of course. I mean, this is now an 18 18-round season. It was going to be 20, but 18 rounds is a lot of rounds. And that means we've only had 6 rounds worth of points so far. We've got 12 more rounds worth of points to go. And if you can gain a certain amount in 6 rounds, you can certainly lose that many in 12. So it's going to be fascinating to see how it plays out. I also want to keep an eye on the drivers who are going to make most of the rounds, if not all of them. You know, the likes of Plastow, we've seen him a lot. We've seen Boland a lot. We've seen Arpino, and they're going to be scoring big points as well. So they're definitely going to be in the mix. They just need to maximise their pace at every given opportunity.
Absolutely. So it does look like the drivers have decided to call it a night, and I don't blame them. Don't blame them whatsoever. So we are going to wrap things up here. Thank you very much to those that have been with us either live or post-event. Your presence is always very, very welcome. We hope you have enjoyed the show. Thank you very much, John Monroe, for joining me in the commentary. It's always a great pleasure to be alongside you for these races, sir.
Likewise, Chris, thank you. And it's thoroughly enjoyable as always, and we'll see you all next week. Big thanks to Steve Proudley behind the scenes once again for working the cameras and helping out with all the technical issues. So great stuff, and look forward to next week.
Absolutely. So same time, same place. You know where to find us for the next round number 4, as we head to France for this next series. Until next time, thank you very much and good night.